Imagine you're a lumberjack. It's 1925. You're kneeling in a German forest at 5 in the morning, frost on the ground, your knees already aching. You grab one end of a 6-foot crosscut saw. Your partner grabs the other. And for the next 8 hours, push, pull, push, pull, you work to bring down a single tree, one day. And then tomorrow, you do it again. That was the reality of forestry work for 3,000 years. From the copper blades of ancient Egypt to the Iron Age, from medieval Europe to the forests of 1920s Germany, nothing had fundamentally changed. The method was identical: muscle, metal, repetition. The strongest men in the world, doing the hardest work in the world, with tools that had barely evolved since the pharaohs. One man decided that was unacceptable. And the company he built in a small Stuttgart workshop, with no investors, no corporate backing, and no guarantee anyone would ever buy what he was making, became the most dominant tool brand in its category in the world, a position it has held, without interruption, for over 50 years. But before we get to the breakthrough, you need to understand the man, because without understanding what shaped Andreas Stihl, the machine he eventually built, makes no sense at all. Andreas Stihl was born on November 10, 1896, in Zurich, Switzerland. His father was a haulage contractor, a man whose entire career was built around moving heavy things from one place to another. From childhood, Stihl understood the cost of physical effort. He understood weight, friction, and what it meant to do something the hard way. At 18, he was conscripted into the German army and sent to the Western Front. 2 years later, battlefield injuries ended his service and sent him home. He enrolled in mechanical engineering, graduated in 1920, and spent the next several years consulting at sawmills, places where massive, stationary cutting machines sat inside buildings, while teams of men destroyed their bodies hauling logs from the forest to feed them. He watched this over and over again: powerful machines bolted to the floor, men breaking themselves to drag the work to the tool, and somewhere in those sawmill visits, the idea that would consume the next 50 years of his life took hold. The saw must go to the tree, not the tree to the saw. That single idea, so obvious in hindsight, so completely ignored for 3 millennia, was the founding principle of everything that followed. In 1926, Stihl opened a one-man workshop in Stuttgart. He was 29 years old. To fund his chainsaw experiments, he sold industrial boiler components, practical products that paid the bills while he worked on the machine nobody had asked for yet. He also took a sales role representing a tree trimming company, which kept putting him in front of more lumberjacks, more sawmill operators, more evidence that the industry needed a better tool, even if it didn't know it yet. His first prototype, the STG-1, was patented in 1926. It was electric, it weighed 141 pounds, and it took 2 men to operate. By modern standards, it was primitive, but here's what matters: it worked. And it was the first electric chainsaw ever built anywhere in the world. From day one, Stihl made a decision that would define the company's culture for the next century. He would only sell through specialist dealers, trained professionals who understood the machine and could service what they sold, not hardware stores, not general merchants, specialists. The chainsaw was a serious tool, and it demanded serious support. 50 units sold in 1927, 100 the next year. Small numbers, but real proof. Stihl knew the electric saw had a fundamental limitation before the ink was dry on the patent. Power cords need power sources. Power sources don't exist in the middle of a forest. The electric saw could work in a mill yard. It could not go to the tree. In 1929, he unveiled his first gasoline-powered chainsaw, the Type A. It weighed 100 pounds, needed 2 men to operate, and produced 6 horsepower. By the standards of what came before it, it was a revolution. For the first time, a powered saw could actually go into a forest and fell a standing tree. The reaction at trade fairs was immediate. As Stihl himself described it, the saws were grabbed right out of his hands. Within 2 years, Stihl was exporting to Switzerland, the Netherlands, Belgium, France, Russia, and North America, the first European company to export chainsaws to both the United States and the Soviet Union simultaneously. 2 ideologically opposed superpowers, one German machine because the forest doesn't care about politics. By 1931, Stihl offered 27 models. The brand was becoming the global standard for chainsaw technology. Then the Depression hit, and here's where the story gets interesting. When the global economy collapsed in 1929, Timber demand fell with it. Companies stopped buying equipment. Most manufacturers cut production and waited. Stihl did neither. He pivoted his factory to manufacturing washing machines, consumer goods people still needed during hard times. The chainsaw business slowed. The company did not. Through the 1930s, Stihl kept refining. Automatic chain lubrication, the centrifugal clutch, the first one-man electric saw in 1930. Each iteration brought the original idea closer to completion. There's also a part of this story that can't be glossed over. In 1933, Andreas Stihl joined the Nazi Party. In 1935, he joined the Allgemeine SS. During the war years, his factory used forced labor, approximately 40 foreign workers per year between 1939 and 1943, with the full extent of their conditions remaining unclear. When Allied bombing raids struck the factory in 1943 and 1944, operations moved to the small town of Neustadt on the Rems River. On May 8, 1945, Germany surrendered. Stihl was arrested, his company seized. He spent 3 years in a Bavarian internment camp before appearing before a denazification tribunal in 1948, where he was classified as a Mitläufer, a follower, the lowest liability category, and released. His company was returned to him. The classification drew criticism then, and historians have questioned it since. What isn't disputed is what Stihl did next. He returned to Weiblingen, where his trusted manager Karl Gutschiar had kept 80 remaining workers building saws through the entire post-war chaos. The workforce had been 500 before the war. The factory was damaged. The market had no appetite. Nobody was buying new equipment. They kept building anyway. That refusal to treat the situation as permanent is what separated Stihl from companies that didn't survive the same era. Stihl was 51 years old, starting over, with a bombed factory and 80 workers. He went back to the machine, because the idea hadn't changed. In 1950, the company released the BL, the first single-person gasoline-powered chainsaw. One man, one saw, no partner required. It was still heavy, still demanding, but the concept was real. 4 years later, the BLK arrived at 31 pounds and 4.5 horsepower, genuinely portable for the first time, light enough to carry up a slope, powerful enough to cut hardwood cleanly. The German army adopted it as their official chainsaw. That kind of institutional endorsement doesn't happen with tools that fail in the field. In 1959, Stihl released the machine that redefined the entire industry. The Contra weighed 26.5 pounds and produced 6 horsepower. Those numbers are impressive, but they're not the story. The story is what Stihl removed. Every chainsaw before the Contra used a gearbox to transfer power from the engine to the chain. Gearboxes add weight, add mechanical complexity, and fail under hard use. The Contra eliminated the gearbox entirely, running a direct drive system, engine power straight to the chain, nothing in between. Lighter, simpler, more reliable. The Contra also introduced a diaphragm carburetor, which replaced the gravity-fed fuel systems of earlier saws. Older saws needed to be held in a specific orientation. Tilt them wrong and the engine starved. The diaphragm carburetor used a flexible membrane that fed fuel regardless of the saw's angle. Horizontal, vertical, inverted. The engine kept running. In a forest, that's everything. Before the Contra, the work dictated the tool's position. With the Contra, the operator moved freely. The tool followed. Forestry companies measured the result. Productivity increased by up to 200%. Operations that required 2 workers before now required 1, and that 1 worker finished faster. Daily production at Stihl jumped from 104 saws to 500 by 1964. The workforce grew from 640 people in 1959 to over 1,500 by 1969. And something else happened that doesn't show up in production numbers. For centuries, the lumberjack had occupied the lowest rung of the labor hierarchy. Brutal work, low pay, no prestige. The modern chainsaw changed that. The man swinging an axe all day became a skilled operator running precision machinery. The profession gained dignity it had never had. That shift had been building since 1926. The Contra completed it. In 1971, Stihl became the largest chainsaw manufacturer in the world. Andreas Stihl transferred leadership to his son Hans-Peter that same year and died in January 1973 at the age of 76. The company he left behind has never been sold, never gone public, never passed outside the family. 5 generations in, Stihl manufactures in 7 countries, sells through more than 55,000 independent dealers across 160 countries, employs over 18,000 people, and generates more than $4 billion in annual revenue. It has been the world's top-selling chainsaw brand every single year since 1971. That run started in a one-man Stuttgart workshop with no investors, no team, and one observation that 3,000 years of history had somehow missed. The machines should go to where the work is, not the other way around. It didn't take genius, it didn't take a government program or a corporate research division. It took one engineer who was unwilling to accept the answer that had always been given, and stubborn enough to spend 50 years proving there was a better one. If you made it this far, you already know this channel is for people who want the real story behind the tools, companies, and builders that shaped the working world. If that's you, hit subscribe and ring the bell. I'm putting these out every week and you don't want to miss what's coming next. See you in the next one.